Welcome to the Tampa Bay IIBA chapter. Today is February 12th, 2026. Today we have the pleasure of having Scott Ambler join us. Scott's going to talk to us today about data skills for business analysts. Scott Ambler is one of the most influential thinkers in the modern Agile practice, a methodologist, author, and architect of Discipline Agile, whose work has helped organizations worldwide deliver better outcomes with clarity, discipline, and adaptability. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Thea Soren. I'm president of the Tampa Bay IIBA chapter. I've been a business analyst for nearly 30 years. My career
Eu já
spans
sei
diverse,
que eu brigo mesmo, eu não tô nem aí.
my
A
career
mais
spans a
sabe, ó.
diverse variety of industries, and I've had the honor of contributing to the BABOK and founding the BA Force Multiplier movement. All that to say, if you need help, we're here to help you. Let's begin, and let me remind you who the IBA is, for those of you who are new, especially. We are the global governing body for the business analysis profession, with more than 30,000 members, over 120 chapters worldwide, and 7 internationally recognized certifications. We are committed to make the world better one business, one project, and one life at a time. The IIBA serves as the global standard setting organization for business analysts. Because of this leadership, the most respected and widely recognized certifications in our profession come from the IIBA. It's grounded in the internationally adopted BABOK guide. What are the benefits of joining the IIBA? You get access to training provided by chapters across the globe. You've got complimentary access to over 25,000 outstanding books, including the BABOK, along with webinars and additional resources. You get discounts on your certification exams, and the discounts are greater than your membership fee. In fact, we recently put a recording on our YouTube channel explaining this more in depth. You're welcome to review it. The IIBA has recently updated all of their Knowledge Center and added more audiobooks, there's many things. It's amazing. I encourage you to go out and explore if you haven't been there in the last 3 months. One thing that they have added that I think is interesting is they have a BABOK Guide technique simulator, and they want your feedback. IIBA chapters are in major cities around the world. If there isn't an active chapter near you, we can talk about you starting a chapter, or you're welcome to the Tampa Bay IIBA. Members of the Tampa Bay, Florida chapter are not restricted to residents of Florida. In fact, we've got participants from all over the globe. If you do not have an IIBA chapter, Tampa Bay can be your chapter, regardless of where you live. Our vision here at the Tampa Bay IIBA is building a thriving community of empowered business analysts. And so why would you choose to join the Tampa Bay chapter? We offer multiple training sessions each week, including CBAT prep and coaching and an acclaimed SDLC workshop, among other things. You can view our upcoming events at our website, and the events are also posted across LinkedIn and Facebook. We have over 400 events since 2021, and those events are available on YouTube on our YouTube channel, but that's a lot of events to go through. So if you go to rpchurchill.com right here, you will see Bob's amazing index. Bob Churchill has put together an amazing index of all of our events with links directly to each event. This is our board. These are the folks who work behind the scenes for your benefit. We appreciate them working so diligently to benefit you, our participants. The result of all that work is we won the global, I can't believe it still. We won the Global Professional Development Award for all of the chapters around the world last year, and we are on our way to doing it again with your help and your participation. A benefit of having all of those people be served is these folks have reached out to tell us that our training and mentoring was a big part of their success in achieving their certification. Many of these are past participants of our study group, but several just worked with us through our YouTube videos. A majority have gone on to lead IIBA chapters here and around the world because we make leaders here. I want to take a moment to appreciate all of our partners, but our number one participant group is you, our members and participants. We also have partnered with over a dozen other IIBA chapters worldwide, and we're mentoring 3 chapters that are just forming. These groups provide training and meetings in some way similar to our own, but I encourage you to check out the Bluegrass chapter as they have some training sessions that are rather interesting. We partnered with the Doback Group based in the UK and with these groups in the Tampa area. We've successfully partnered with several recruiting services that provide our people jobs, which is exciting, and training companies. Our goal, as always, is to elevate our BA community. We've recently partnered with Purdue University. We are providing professional mentors to Purdue. Professional mentors in this case are people with at least 5 years of job experience. You've really done the work, you've done the job. They want you to come in and give advice to their students, and their students get to look at your application and say, that's the person I want to talk to. Maybe once a month, maybe every 2 weeks. It could be 1 to 3 hours a week is typical. If you're interested, reach out to me. Benefits of our partnerships include discounts and special events. Watermark Learning offers you a 40% discount using this code. That means you can get unlimited access to 1,200 CBAP practice test questions with a 40% discount. Adaptive US, who specializes only in business analysis, has over 90 free items on their website, and they offer our participants a 20% discount on all their live classes and on-demand courses, excluding the IIBA exam vouchers. BA Live Conference is coming in April, and they virtually bring you over 30 brilliant speakers and 12 months of access to the recordings, but the early bird pricing is expiring tomorrow. If you're interested, you can save 50 pounds for their fee, and that makes the cost about $264 US. Next week, right here, Tawu brings us insights to action automating business workflow with MS Fabric and Power Automate. Microsoft Fabric and Power Automate are powerful platforms when used together, can streamline workflows, reduce manual effort, and significantly improve business processes. On February 19th, later that same day, I'll be kicking off the CBAP study group. It's been a highly successful group that I've taught since before I helped write the latest version of the Babok. It's a weekly study group that goes until September, which is 7 months, but it gives you the PDUs required to apply for the test. I have a good amount of additional materials I've developed over the years, and I'll help you with your application. If you don't think you have enough experience to qualify for the CBAP, reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's have a conversation. You don't want to be stuck with incorrect information. So plan on getting your CBAP in October. Right now we have 8 spots left. I do encourage you to get your Babok. You need to have a physical version of your Babok. If you can live with a PDF, go ahead, but I encourage a physical version. But whatever you do, be sure you get version 3 of the Babok. Version 2 is no longer a good thing to be studying. Early Bird Special for Software Testing for Business Analysts by David Verbanik is going to be ending on February 7th. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's already ended. Early Bird Special is no longer happening, but you do get the 7-hour virtual workshop, and we'll give you insights on your QA stakeholders, as well as how your requirements need to be structured best to be tested. On February 26th, Rochelle Tan is going to bring an actual case study from her own experience. It's insightful. It's how problem-solving workshop help overcome bottlenecks and unlock sustainable improvements in business transformation. She's a great presenter. I encourage you to come for that. On March 5th, Ashley Snow explores how business analysts and project managers can work together to balance speed and value by clearly decoupling solution and project domains. Learn how to focus on the right scope, ensures teams not only deliver faster, but deliver outcomes that truly matter. Ashley has done both business analysis and project management. She knows what she's talking about. On March 12th, Tamara Koppel explores how business analysis can be scaled down for small businesses without losing impact. Learn how just enough analysis helps entrepreneurs and consultants make better decisions, avoid costly mistakes, and focuses effort where it matters most. I've given you a lot to look at, but I want you to know all of this is on our website, tampabay.iiba.org. You can go to that and check out all of these events. Also, on our LinkedIn group, the IIBA chapter in Florida, USA, we post information about these events. We put recordings of every single thing out on YouTube. We have over 200 videos there of past training. And one more time, rpchurchill.com is where you can go to get the index. Now I'm going to turn this over to Scott Ambler and let him take the screen. And I'm looking forward to this presentation. Please hold your questions to the end. If you need help remembering them, drop them in the chat and we will let Scott have the screen.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just ask, you can't see, you are seeing just the big slide, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so anyways, so thank you very much, everyone, for either coming here live to see this presentation, or if you happen to be watching the video, hey, that's good too. Excuse me, I've got a cold that I have not been able to shake for a while, so if I start coughing, you'll know why. Anyways, so what I'd like to share tonight is a collection of what I would consider important data skills for business analysts. So, who am I? Thea gave a really good introduction. I'll just fill in a few blanks. I've been around working, particularly in the IT space, since the mid 80s, including in business analysis, pretty much the entire gamut of every role that you can take on in IT. I've taken on at some point in time, including on the business side. So I've had some of our own techniques inflicted upon me. That was a bit of a learning experience. But anyways, and in particular, I've worked in the data space a fair bit. Excuse me. So I'm going to share a bunch of ideas and techniques that I've found to work in practice over the years. You may know me as the person behind the Agile data or the Agile modeling method, or I'm one of the co-creators of PMI's Discipline Agile Toolkit, if you happen to be familiar with that, as well as other things. I did a lot of work in the unified process back in the day, for those of you who are around for that. So a lot of the material in this deck, particularly the images, are taken from my new book, Not Just Data: How to Deliver Continuous Enterprise Data. And the focus of this book is one type of common data initiative in an organization, building an enterprise data warehouse in order to support data-driven decision making as well as AI, either building, training AI systems or supplying the data to operate them. Before this presentation started, we were having a group of us were chatting away about AI and data, and frankly, without high quality data, you're in trouble when it comes to building AIs and operating them, and frankly, you're also in trouble when it comes to data-driven decision making. So it really is a garbage in, garbage out type of a situation.
Scott, you got a presentation thing in the middle of your screen. It says continue to share.
Oh, how about
Perfect.
now? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I didn't realize that was coming through.
That's
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, I can't see what you folks are saying. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start. I'll start with the beginning, with the end in mind, and I'll summarize the takeaways that I hope you take away from this talk. And then I'm going to hit on pretty much randomly these topics. All four of these themes as you'll see, are woven throughout my slides. So there really wasn't a good topic-oriented ordering for the material here, other than a slide at a time. So anyway, so what am I talking about here? So today's takeaways. First, data analysis is a critical aspect of many IT initiatives. We'll get into that. Having good, solid data analysis skills is certainly important, I believe, for many people, including BAs. And this requires technical skills, knowledge, and tooling. So it is very technical, but you also need the business analysis skills as well. So data analysts will be working with stakeholders just like we are, but will also be working with highly technical things like data sources, for example, and helping to prototype data and good stuff like that. So there's a lot of very technically oriented skills here. And it's not just about data. So this is more oriented towards my friends in the data community. Data is important. I like to say that data is the lifeblood of any organization. but there's more, just like there's more to people than lifeblood. You have a skeleton, you have flesh, you have skin, organs, hair. Many, well, not me, but most people have hair. So there's more to you than lifeblood, and it's the same in an organization. So data is important, but it's only one of many important things. So I like to say, the way I like to say it is, yes, data is the lifeblood of your organization, but if you only have the lifeblood, then what you've really got is a crime scene. So, and this I think is a important observation for many traditional data people. So, I'll just leave it at that. So just like when you're working in a new line of business or a new business domain, you need to learn the lingo. And in order to be effective doing data analysis on an initiative, you need to understand the data lingo. And this is certainly not all of the data terms that you're going to have to learn, but it's a reasonable range to get your head wrapped around it. And I'm not going to define all these terms. We'd be here all night. But anyway, I just want to make it clear that there are technical terms and you need to be able to understand them. You need to understand them. You need to be able to use them and apply them appropriately. And like with anything, there's overlap in concepts and there's some marketing stuff and the technology changes over time and you got to keep up is I guess what I'm getting at. So, another important concept that I always like to get across is that context counts. So, the type of initiative that excuse me, that you're on will determine, what you need to do and what your skill needs are to support that type of initiative. So, for example, if you're on a legacy system replacement or update or refurbishment, then a lot of the data stuff will be data profiling. I'll talk about what that is in a bit, as well as data modeling. So it's pretty straightforward, technical, hard skills, but straightforward skills. If you're building a new application, then you'll be getting more into the business analysis domain, working on personas and stories and acceptance criteria, as well as data modeling, because applications are also reasonably straightforward as well. We have a pretty good handle on how to build those now, so the skill needs are fairly straightforward. And other skills like data profiling might be needed here if your application, for example, is sitting on top of an existing legacy data source and you don't quite know what's in that data source. Or you might know, but you're not totally sure. When it comes to an AI training or building an AI, data profile, excuse me, data profiling is going to be absolutely key, as well as business process modeling. I'm not really going to get into that at all here tonight, but the fundamental idea is if you don't understand the business process that you're supporting with your AI, or the portion of the business process that you're supporting, you're really not going to be able to build an effective AI. It's as simple as that. And there's a lot more to AI development than just these things, but certainly these are important. And a technique called question stories, which I will talk about later on tonight. Basically, if you're familiar with user stories from Agile, it's a data flavor of a user story. And the rewording is important. So anyways, and it's interesting, if you've been on a data project over the years trying to do Agile, Scrum tends to fall apart for those types of projects. And we can talk about that later if anybody has any questions about that. But you really want to take more of a continuous delivery type of approach, more of a Kanban-based approach rather than a Scrum-based approach. But and then finally, and here's just another example, if you're building an enterprise data warehouse or a data pipeline, then profiling is going to be important, as well as the more business analysis oriented techniques and data modeling as well. So it's pretty much a superset of everything we've seen so far. And this is what the topic of my book is about, and this is why I'm able to pull examples out of it for different techniques, just because you need it. It's a complex endeavor, which is why organizations tend to struggle with it. So I've thrown the term enterprise data pipeline around a bit. I just want to make it clear what I'm talking about. We'll see some examples of it. We'll see this diagram, I believe, again. Excuse me. But the basic idea is that you're building a pipeline of data, of enterprise data, bringing data in from a wide range of sources. You'll have issues concerning the semantics of the data, like data will be stored in different ways in different places. It will not be consistent. You'll have data quality problems. You'll have an overwhelming amount of data. I'm sure you're all struggling with big data or really, really, really big data these days and real-time data and so on. So there's a lot of challenges there. Many of you are probably working in regulatory environments. So not only do you have this overwhelming amount of, not so good data, you need to support data lineage, traceability, the data version of traceability for regulatory compliance. Particularly if you're in the financial space or if you're a publicly traded company, Sarbanes-Oxley from like 10 years ago, or 20 years ago now, sort of forces that issue. So then anyways, so the data goes through the pipeline, it gets cleaned up a bit. You can, at various stages, it's applicable for training or running AI. And then finally at the end, it comes out of your, some sort of business intelligence layer as clean data information for your humans who are trying to make data-driven decisions. So anyways, a very high level diagram, making things look a lot easier than it is. And like I said, most organizations really seem to struggle with this for many reasons. Well, it's hard is the big reason, but also just an overwhelming amount of data debt that they need to pay down at some point. And for those of you who are working in this space or something similar to it, the one thing that data scientists like to complain about a lot, and rightfully so, is that they spend the joke is that they spend 80% of their time cleaning data and the other 20% of their time complaining about cleaning data. And if you look at the stats, that's not far off. So at least the 80%. But they certainly and rightfully so, they do like to complain about it because it's not fun. And that's a waste. It's a blatant waste. You've got these highly paid, highly skilled people, and they're cleaning up other people's messes, often because they were too lazy to do the job right, and often because the business side of the house doesn't want to pay to fix the problem. So, anyways, I can talk about that one issue all night long, and I'm not going to. So, moving on. For those of you who are familiar with agile modeling, which was more of a disciplined, mature approach to agile, or at least to modeling and documentation aspects of agile, one of the things that we would point out, like from an analysis point of view, is that during the inception or the startup phase or the sprint zero, if you want to call it that, you have to do some initial high-level requirements modeling. Your initial stack of stories, for example, needs to come from somewhere. It just doesn't magically beam down from the Starship Enterprise. And I hope you're doing far more than just writing up stories, but you might be doing some UI modeling, for example, some business process modeling, and many other things. So we'll talk about some of that. And then during construction, the details, excuse me, come out just in time. So at the beginning, I want to do some high-level modeling, like requirements modeling and architecture modeling and high-level planning and good stuff like that, because I want to get going in the right direction. But then I want to gather the details at the last most responsible moment. So that's what just-in-time requirements gathering, just-in-time design is all about. And we'll see techniques on for both sides of these for both of these endeavors, and there's significant overlap between the two. It's just the amount of detail and when you do it is the issue. This is a bird's eye view of an abaya room. What an abaya room is. So yeah, so in the book I go through an example of a reasonably co-located team. Some people are working remotely, but for the most part they're co-located, and they do initial modeling, initial planning on this initial project initiation stuff for the first 2 weeks of the initiative. And they spend most of their time in this Obaya room, which is basically this large room with a bunch of whiteboards. In this case, they've got They've got a window in the front where they're putting sticky notes on the window. But the point is that each section of the whiteboard is used for certain things. So there's sections for technical requirements, for the business architecture, for technical architecture, and so on. So I've just sort of highlighted the requirement-y type things that we might be doing at the beginning of a project or the beginning of an initiative. So one of those artifacts that we might work on is a vision canvas. And this is more business analysis in nature than it is data analysis. But I just want to point out that it is important. It does have some technical as well as some business issues on it. So it really sort of crosses, it really is about the vision. And as we know, we want to explore many issues at the beginning of an initiative, not just requirements. So, anyways, this is a great summary. From a cynical point of view, I'm a big fan of canvases. Don't get me wrong, but from a agile heresy point of view, all a canvas is a big form that we fill out collaboratively. So, for all the whining the agilists do about paperwork. They do seem to love paperwork sometimes. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Personas, I'm going to assume you're familiar with them. This is a mid-90s technique, I guess, coming from the UX, the user experience community. And it's a great way, so if you don't have access to all your stakeholders, or if you don't know potentially, and you're sort of guessing who some of your stakeholders might be, or classes of stakeholders, I should say, then personas are a good way to go. They tend to, I prefer to work with real stakeholders. So I sort of see personas as a failure. But if you got to do it, if you've got to use them, you got to use them. So anyway, so I just want to point out that sometimes I do in fact have to use them as the basis for who I'm writing stories for. In this case, we'll see Luke, the force is strong with this guy, is a loan officer, and this loan officer role appears in a lot of stories coming up. One of the other things that I hope we're identifying early on in a project are my quality service, or my NFRs, the non-functional requirements. I really don't like that term because it sounds like they don't work. I tend to use the quality of service term, but the basic idea here is that these are these are important technical issues usually, or business technical issues in some cases. So I've got two colors going on here. The yellow ones are more business oriented technical requirements versus the blue ones, which are more technically oriented requirements. Be that as it may. And frankly, they were coming from different types of stakeholders, and they in this example they used different stickies for the sheer joy of it, I guess. So, anyways, the point is so why do I care about quality service requirements? Well, they drive important aspects of your architecture. They cross-cut your functional requirements, your stories, or your business processes, and your business rules and good stuff like that. And they also drive important aspects of your testing strategy. So for example, if I have some hardcore security requirements, that tells me I've got some hardcore security testing that needs to be done, right? So it's, if I don't have the security requirements, well, maybe I'm missing them, or, maybe just don't have to worry about it. So anyways, I want to start thinking about these fairly early on because they drive important aspects of what we do, including data architecture aspects. Having to have a secure data architecture, which I hope you have, is an important thing that you need to work through and figure out how to build. And some of the requirements there, some of the data-oriented ones, were things like not dropping data. Because if you're running, if you've got all these legacy data sources, you're pulling data out of them in order to get it to some sort of a BI solution, so that way people can make data-driven decisions. You don't want to drop a data load, right? Or you don't want to drop like every fifth record because your processor is overwhelmed, or whatever it is that you're doing, right? That's a very significant problem. So having requirements to not drop data um, has some implications for your architecture. I'll just leave it at that. This is a technique called question stories. Like I said, this to me is the probably the critical requirement artifact for any sort of a data-oriented project. Um, I'm not a big fan of data-driven approaches, which seems strange. If you're doing a data project, you think they'd be data-driven. No, no, that's pretty much the kiss of death. What you really want to do is take a usage or a business process-oriented approach. So if I don't know how people are going to use the data, I really don't know what data I need, nor do I know how to design it properly. So I've got to understand how people are going to use my data. And in this case, if we're building a enterprise data warehouse, this enterprise data pipeline thing, then well, why do people use this? Well, the humans, the data consumers, they want to get questions answered because they have their business processes, and in the middle, and they're working their process. The loan adjusters are adjusting loans, and the investment advisors are investing clients. And in order to do that, they need information to support what's going on. They need to get questions answered, so that way they can provide better service to their customers. So, anyways, so I want to start with this usage-driven approach rather than a data-driven approach. One of the challenges now it's not as bad as it used to be because the data folks have been adopting Agile over the last 5 or 10 years now. But before that, they suffered from a horrendous project failure rate. They were the data warehouses in particular were the second worst class of IT project, coming second only to package implementations as far as failure rates go. A very common problem in the data community was they would build it and nobody would come problem. So the first release of a data warehouse, for example, would almost always be a failure. Technically, it might be fantastic, but people weren't using it because they weren't getting the data they needed. And it wasn't until the second or third release that they would actually get what they wanted because, oh, well, many reasons, but one of them was because they were taking a data-driven approach rather than a usage-driven approach. Um, you may or may not want to have AI flavored question stories. It's basically the same thing. The main difference, two main differences. First, it's not a person role; it's an AI role. So the user, the consumer of the data is an AI rather than a human. And the second thing, they're not really answering questions. They're not using the data to answer questions. They're using the data to make prediction. AI, an artificial intelligence, is a prediction machine. It Data comes in and it predicts the answer from that incoming data. And this is true even of LLMs, which is what everybody is familiar with. When you type a prompt into an LLM, you type a prompt into ChatGPT, it's predicting what you want to hear, and it spews out an answer, and maybe it's good. Excuse me. Maybe it's what you want, maybe it's not what you want, and then you tweak your prompt and so on, right? So they're making predictions. So, anyways, slight rewording. Just like a question story, I'll go back a slide. A question story is a slight rewording of a user story, if you're familiar with user stories. Now, one difference that I should have pointed out that I didn't was at the bottom of the question story, I'm pointing out the enterprise capability or the domain that this story is applicable to because I want to trace back to my enterprise model. So in this case, this organization had what's called an enterprise capability model, and they wanted to trace back to it in order to to make sure that they were doing work that was in scope, which they were, but also they wanted to make sure they were supporting the organization effectively. They want to make sure some of the domains or some of the capabilities weren't being starved out. So there's a couple good reasons for traceability, and so they were supporting it. And as you can see, it's easy. Just at the bottom of the sticky, you put you put the capability you're supporting in. So anyway, so this is like I said, these are question stories for AI, or if you want to call them AI stories, have at it. This is okay. So another technique that you'll want to become familiar with are conceptual diagrams, like high-level data models. Some people will call these domain models or high-level domain models. Some people will call them conceptual models or high-level conceptual models. So, like everything, there's always multiple terms with the same basic idea. Don't waste your time in arguments about terminology like that. Like, just find out what other people want to, what other people are using in that organization and go with the flow. So anyways, I prefer the term conceptual diagram for whatever that's worth. So the big thing here is what I'm showing is this high level diagram. And what it's a high level data model, basically. It's showing the main business entities and the main business concepts and the relationships between them. Now, the real enterprise data model would be huge and would be far more detailed. But right now, at the beginning of a project, this is the level that I need. I just want to get an understanding of the landscape. I want to start identifying some of my main business terms, because these business terms are appearing on other artifacts, like the question stories that we just saw, right? So I want to have some consistency. So I want to start worrying about my taxonomy and my ontology as I'm starting to put these models together in order to have, well, first of all, just for consistency on my own initiative, but certainly I want to leverage any enterprise metadata that my organization has, if any. And if we don't have any, then I probably want to start it. So I want to start investing in an enterprise taxonomy and enterprise ontology and so on. Enterprise data lineage, the data traceability stuff. As far as detailed modeling goes, so the previous models were sort of high level, what I would start off with initially. But then what am I going to do in construction? Well, I'm certainly going to be leveraging question stories and data models and so on, but I'll be going to different levels. So, for example, and obviously, and there's no harm, no foul in worrying about UI sketches early on in a project. When I'm facilitating analysis sessions, particularly initial analysis, I'll let people, I'll push people to do a few sketches, like a screen set, or in this case, a report sketch, just to get out of their system, right? They want to be heard. End users tend to be user interface focused. So, I want the report that looks like this, or I want a screen that looks like this. Okay, fine. Get it out of your system. Let's sketch it. And frankly, it's valuable information. Anyways, I don't want to get too detailed. And this is certainly the level of detail. This is probably a bit too detailed, but I wouldn't go much further than this because I would rather get into implementation. Now, what is useful though, one of the things I do like about these sorts of sketches is that it makes it a lot easier for me for anybody, I guess, when we're identifying the acceptance criteria for a story. So the blue stickies here are acceptance criteria. The criteria and which are high level requirements, right? This is the criteria that my implementation of this story needs to meet in order to say, yes, we've actually built it properly. Well, if I've got so if I just have this yellow sticky, this story, it's not a lot of detail here, right? Whereas if I've asked the question, hey, for this story, what should this screen look like, or what should this report look like to respond to the story? And then, so the stakeholders, spend a few minutes to sketch this out on a whiteboard or bang it out in Microsoft Word or something. If they're, I don't know, I wouldn't do that. But anyways, they sketch it on a whiteboard, and then based on that sketch, well, suddenly I can pretty easily identify the acceptance criteria, right? Because I got to build this. So, like based on the yellow sticky, we need to build something that looks like this. Well, how do I know that it's correct? Well, it better conform to that criteria there. Now, these criteria will then in turn turn into actual acceptance tests, like executable tests at some point, maybe reasonably soon if you're taking a test-driven development approach, which you may or may not be doing. As well as implementing the end report or the end dashboard if you're using dashboard technology. What data do we need to support the development of this story? Well, here are the main business entities, the data attributes. So, well, I'm not going to go back in slides, but if you take my word for it, these data entities, most of them appeared on the, or actually, no, I showed a different domain for that example. But anyways, they would have appeared, at least some of them would have, on the main conceptual model. And then now we're starting to flesh it out. But this is still a business-oriented, high-level domain model still, right? We're getting down there. But I'm not worried about data details at the present moment. And so this is one of the areas where the data people tend to get into trouble. They start worrying about the details. Is the ID, is it a character ID? Is it numeric? Can be digits? I don't care, right? We can figure it out. We'll figure it out when we get to it, right? I don't need to know that now. I don't need to document it. It'll be, whatever's in the database is whatever's in the database. Don't worry about it, right? That's like, minor details that will come out in time. And actually, it comes out in the next slide. So when we start getting down into design, now this is probably further down into the weeds than most business analysts are going to go, but you should know at least this is what we're getting to. And who knows, maybe you will. Now, in this case, so this is a business vault model that supports, and just take my word for this. I'm not going to go through full traceability in this, but so this domain model, which I would expect a business analyst to be able to create, is supported by this physical data model, in this case for the business vault, which is where we store the critical data that we need. And yes, as you can see, we're getting into the details of types and sizes and all that good sort of stuff. And just take my word for it, this model is correct based on the previous model. And now the good thing with most modern data tools, if I've modeled to this level, and I know my data sources, so I get a little bit of mapping to do, which can be automated in many cases. I can automatically generate this anyways, because this is based, so given this, and just take my word for this, given this model, there are a collection of design patterns that would give me this model, and there are many tools that can do that, and get it to 95% plus accuracy. So a lot of this work has been automated away. You still need humans in the loop. I wouldn't trust anything that's being generated. And I should have mentioned I have a master's degree in AI, and I am very, very leery about applying AI in the IT space. So, anyways, be careful out there, kids. It's dangerous. If you're working with data people, chances are pretty good they're going to be familiar with this book. It's about at least 10 years old now. Great book written by Lawrence Core. And in that book, it covers a lot of stuff. But one of the things that he really sort of brought to the data community was basic fundamental data business analysis concepts. So he introduced what he called the 7 Ws model, because there's a W in each of these terms, even though they don't all start with W, because English. But anyways, question stories. So a lot of data people particularly data warehousing people, will be familiar with this model. So you should be familiar with this model. Question stories address those 4 issues. Data models address those 5. So it's interesting. And so one of the reasons why the data community suffered from such a high failure rate was they never really understood why they were doing what they were doing, and they may or may not have understood how they were going to do it. And they needed, you need other artifacts that go beyond both data models and question stories, or just stories in general, in order to get the job done. So, like acceptance criteria and acceptance tests, for example. So, anyways, you need a wide range of models, a wide range of artifacts. So have at it. So for a continuous data pipeline, this is a logical architecture of the high level diagram I showed earlier. And the only reason why I'm showing this is because there's for business analysts, there's 3 interesting things on this diagram. How do you deal with the legacy data sources that you're working with? What the heck is going on with this enterprise supporting infrastructure stuff? And wait a minute, we've got different types of data consumers, humans and AIs. So how do we deal with that? So, what's data profiling? I've been throwing this term around a lot, but I haven't really defined what it is. So, data profiling is basically the exploration of existing data sources to figure out what the heck is going on there. What data is being stored? What's the quality? And the quality will vary within the data source and between data sources. Hopefully, I can work with the humans to figure out, what data should I trust from this source? What should I not trust? What is the official source of record or sources of record? If your organization knows that, they may not. What data sources exist? That's an interesting question. I've worked in some very large organizations, and I've lost count of the number of times that we've run into data sources that nobody in the IT group knew about. Things built by, summer students, things built by, Deloitte, because Deloitte, some business guy did stealth IT and had a budget and, brought in some contractors to build something, and now suddenly the IT people got to support it. Yay! So, anyways, stuff happens. So, or just people build spreadsheets. A lot of your business probably runs on big honking spreadsheets that were developed by people that really don't know how to develop and probably haven't done a very good testing job. And yet, business decisions are being made on these questionable spreadsheets, which may or may not be accurate. But they're important data sources and you got to deal with it. So, and there's the files, there's data streams coming in, social media data, for example, could be coming in, just overwhelming amount of stuff. So you got to have an understanding of what you've got, what you want, what you can trust, and so on. So data profiling is a fairly complex and important thing. To put this into perspective, now it's not as bad as it used to be, but I worked at an organization, an American healthcare organization, about 10 years ago now. And the average story, on average, for each story, we were spending 6 weeks of data profiling to understand the data that we needed in order to implement the story. So, and I'm going to talk about that number in a bit, but 6 weeks on average. It's probably down, like with the new modern tools, it's probably down to 2 or 3, but it's still nasty. It's just hard, nasty work sometimes. Now, maybe you're lucky and you've got a bunch of well-known, high-quality data sources, so your data profiling is trivial, but I never get in those situations for the most part. Different types of data consumers. So the point I want to make here, I mean, this is a portion of that logical diagram we saw earlier. Um, the point I want to make here is that your end, your human end users need questions to answer. So you might be building dashboards for them, or reports, or supporting self-service BI. In this case, this organization was using Tableau. That's one of many BI platforms you could be using. So you got to work with the humans and you got to figure out what they need and so on. So there's that work to be done. Um, to build AIs, in order to answer questions, you usually need small chunks of data, right? You might only need 10 or 15 data elements. You might need a lot of instances, but you only need 10 or 15 data elements to answer a question generally. To build an operational AI, they tend to need very wide, highly denormalized data in order to train, and boatloads of it, like as much data as you can possibly get them, usually. And then, in order to operate them, they need probably not as wide, not as many data elements. To answer questions, but they still will need a lot, and they'll need like one row at a time type of a thing. So during training, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of data rows, very wide data. Um, During operation, very wide data, but 1 or 2 rows at a time type of thing, usually. And that's a generalization, but that typically is the way it plays out. So that's different. So the point is that the needs of human end users are different than the needs of the AI artificial data consumers. So you will need to work differently to support each. And in the case of building a continuous enterprise data pipeline, you have both categories of data consumer, and you need to support them at the same time. So, um, and the data profiling tends to be a big thing. And data cleansing tends to be a big thing, or the big delta between those two, I should say. So, anyways, it's different. Different categories of user are very, very different, and the data teams are getting hammered by this sort of thing right now. So anyway, so that's what I'm getting at there. Just you got two main categories of users. And as far as the enterprise metadata, the infrastructure stuff along the bottom, as a business analyst, you should at least be taking advantage of this information. So like, the glossary, the enterprise glossary, for example, the ontology is the enterprise, the taxonomy and ontology are the enterprise business concepts, the glossary and the relationships between these terms. Then we've got the concept of data semantics, where what does the data mean? So you've got a data column. So you've got this code column, type code column, and one of the type code values is 5. What does 5 mean? I don't know. It depends, right? And so that's what the semantics. What is the meaning of this type of data is what's going on there. And this is absolutely critical. So as an analyst, that's one of your big things when you're doing data profiling is trying to figure out the data semantics of the source that you're currently profiling. And then how does that map to what you want? So there's a huge issue in the data world is, well, this is what you got. This over here is what you want. Is it, is there a mapping here, right? Do we have what we want? And that's a big thing in AI. I've seen AI projects just run aground because the data they needed just didn't exist, or the quality just wasn't good enough at the time, with no coherent path to get yet at that time to get what they needed. So, and then, bad things happen from there. And then finally, data lineage. I think I've got a slide coming up on that. But the basic idea is, how did we get? Actually, I do have a slide coming on that. So I'll just leave it. I'll leave it for now. Okay, so as an analyst, how do you fit in on a data project? So from a sprint-based, like a Scrum-based or Agile point of view, a lot of your activities are either in something called look-ahead data analysis, or supporting the team as they're doing, the day-to-day sprint stuff. So look-ahead data analysis, it's focused on doing enough analysis work in order to fulfill the definition of ready for the team. The definition of ready for an Agile team is a quality gate that analysis work needs to get through in order for the team to accept what you've done. So the question becomes, how much data profiling do we need to do? How much business modeling do we need to do? How much UI modeling do we need to do, if any, right? So do we need one of those report sketches that I showed earlier on? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. This is something you need to negotiate with the team. So there's this pre-sprint analysis work that needs to be done in order to get ready to get the package of work describing a question story or a defect report, or whatever artifacts you've got on your sprint backlog, ready to be worked on by the team. That's look ahead analysis. In the Scrum world, they used to call this grooming, with the not being aware of the negative connotation of the word grooming. They call it backlog refinement sometimes, but it's really look ahead analysis when it gets down to it. And sometimes look ahead design, but I'm not worried about that right now. So what's the implication? So remember that a few minutes ago I was talking about this organization where we were doing, I'm just about to wrap up here for anybody looking at the clock. We were doing 6 weeks of analysis work for each story. Well, this was the problem, right? So and it's just the nature of the data. There's data quality problems, but there's also just some significant complexity. So when you've got to do 6 weeks on average of work, or in this case, the average is probably 3 or 4. If you've got to do several weeks of analysis work before a story can be worked on by the team, well, that work needs to occur before the team is about to work on the story, right? So in this case, we're in sprint 5, from what I can tell. We're planning for sprint 9, so almost 2 months, assuming it's a 2-week sprint, almost 2 months from now. We're planning, we're trying to identify what work do we need to do in order to get these question stories ready. So then the analysts get together and they say, well, for story 9A, we've got 3 weeks worth of analysis work to be done. For 9B, 6 weeks. For 9C, 1 week, right? So that analysis work all needs to occur before the beginning of sprint 9 because we've got to do the work to get the question story ready to be worked on. Well, we had the same problem with Sprint 8, Sprint 7, Sprint 6, and so on. So we've got an interesting scheduling problem here because we've got to do all this analysis work before the team will get around to it. That's a bit of a problem. And so this is one of the reasons why Agile doesn't work that well for data projects because of the nature of this. The so the solution, one solution is to move to a continuous way of working, to do more of a Kanban thing. So if you're familiar with Kanban, it has this sort of a life cycle during construction. So they don't work in sprints. So what they do instead of pulling a sprint, 2 weeks worth of work off the stack, they pull one work item in at a time. So as a result, the analysis work just becomes part of the overall development work. You still have to do the analysis. You're never going to get away from that. But you don't have to do all this overhead of planning and rescheduling. Because what happens if the stories get reprioritized? So you're in the middle of sprint 7, and then suddenly the priority shift. A new story gets put on the stack, and they're more important than the story than what you had for 9 already. Or 9C gets deprioritized, and you've already done the analysis for it, right? So there's a bunch of really goofy things that occur because Scrum works in sprints. So if you get rid of sprints, you get rid of a lot of overhead. And this is one of the great religious debates of the Scrum versus Kanban communities. If you ever pay attention to that stuff. We earlier I talked about data lineage. So the issue here is, so this is a high-level logical architecture of a data warehouse, data pipeline thing, and the issue becomes one of, well, how do you know? Oops, sorry. So on this report, this green X in the right corner here is a data element, and it's some sort of calculated number, right? It's the your tax rate, your amount of taxes you need to pay. Well, if you get audited, a fair question is, well, where'd that data come from? And you got to be able to answer that. If you're in a regulated environment, you got to be able to answer that. That's basically what Sarbanes-Oxley was all about from like a billion years ago. So anyways, data lineage is basically traceability. So, well, oops, wrong direction. That X comes out of the data mart or the info mart. So that's pretty obvious, easy traceability. Well, how did it get in the info mart? Well, it was some sort of a load process where it was denormalized. Uh-oh, denormalized. That means multiple elements went into that figure. So in this case, we see 3 elements were used to calculate that figure. So that's not so bad. Well, where did those 3 elements come from? Well, they were loaded from here out of the raw vault. Oh crap. Now those 3 elements were loaded from 6 elements, right? This is just the way it works. Well, where'd those 6 elements come from? Well, they came out of our data sources. Some of them came out of databases, some of them came out of files. Oh, so here's our traceability. So this one figure appearing on a report is actually coming from 6 different data sources. Some of them are operational databases, one is a file, and one is a data stream. And if you can't show that, and there's calculations, of course, going on all through here. So you got to know what the calcs are as well. And if you can't answer that question, the auditor will be reasonably unimpressed with you. And then bad conversations occur from there. So anyways, this is traceability, data lineage is a reasonably important thing, and you've got to be aware of that. And often, the people doing the data analysis work, which could be you, are responsible for making sure the lineage is kept up to date. Because this is basically an analysis activity. Yeah, setting up the data properly is an analysis activity, usually. So just to wrap up here before I go to questions for a few minutes, and I apologize for going a little bit later than I had intended. The main points I want to make, data analysis is a critical aspect of all these initiatives. This is a great set of skills to pick up if you're a business analyst or if you're a data engineer as well. I would also say that, or a data tester. Uh, Obviously, I think I covered a lot of technical skills and knowledge and potential tooling that you'll want to come up to speed on. And I'd also argue it's not just about data. So business analysts are in a good position here because they understand the bigger analysis picture. You just might not yet have the detailed data analysis skills that you need, but you can pick those up. Understanding fundamental analysis skills, working with stakeholders and getting their needs out of them is the critical thing. And the data analysis stuff is mostly technical when it gets down to it. But still very, very important, but more technical in nature. So anyways, so thank you very much. I'm happy to stick around as long as you like for questions. I appreciate some of you might need to, oh, I'm right on the time. But anyways, I will stick around for as long as you like. I'm going to stop sharing now and let's go to humans.
Going to the humans.
Going
You've
to the
had
humans.
you've had a lot of comments in the chat. I see applause happening out
Yay.
here for you,
Thank you.
Scott. Uh, I
Yeah, let's
believe
take
it's a
some
gentleman
questions.
named Joseph that had a question.
I can you hear me?
Yes, we
We
can.
can.
Oh, okay. So my question was at the beginning of the presentation, there were a lot of diagrams, a lot of just visuals. And I mean, and I can appreciate, while I can appreciate that the technical team might be able to understand that, my question is, do you find that tool useful in communicating requirements to stakeholders or confirming requirements with stakeholders?
Yes. So my experience is I'm very much into collaborative modeling. I am not a big fan of interviewing people, writing up documentation, and then throwing a document at them and say, "Hey, do you want to review this and give me feedback?" I just think that's a spectacularly bad idea. What I prefer to do, if you remember at the very beginning, I talked about an abaya room, whiteboards all over the place. I want to work closely with my stakeholder, and if it's not a physical thing, do it in Miro, right? But I want to work closely with my stakeholders and I want them to do the diagrams. Now, some of them are more technical in nature, so my technical stakeholders will work on technical diagrams, whereas my business-oriented stakeholders will work on more business-oriented things. But teaching people how to write question stories is a few minutes. Teach them how to do screen sketches, like a sketch on a whiteboard of what I want this screen and report to look like. If that's more than 15 seconds, you've probably got a problem. So these are not these are really dirt easy techniques to teach and to facilitate. You still got to facilitate. You got to ask questions and you got to prod people along. I find that with collaborative modeling, the big problem is getting people to get their butts out of seats, and pick up a whiteboard marker and get to the whiteboard, or pick up a pad of stickies and a pen and start slapping stickies on the wall. But once you get people doing that, you can have great conversations, and it's their models. So they're involved with the conversation. I got to trust them that they understand what they just spewed out of their mouths. But yeah, I got to keep an eye on things. I got to ask questions. I'm looking. Yeah, so if you remember, that diagram had like models on different parts of the whiteboards, right? So this section was all about technical stories. This section was all about UI stuff. And the reason why is as we're modeling, I might be working a question story, and then suddenly they bring up a UI thing. Okay, let's work on the UI thing. Oh, then they start talking about data. Okay, let's work on the data model. So I want to iterate back and forth between different spots on the whiteboard or on the Miro board if it's a remote session. And I want to work on the right technique at the right time. And the only way I can pull that off is by using really simple, straightforward techniques.
Thank you.
What other questions do we have for Scott?
Station.
Yes,
I have a
Stephen.
question about like I noticed on one of your slides you had a lot of different data terms. What's the best way to like build mastery of those terms and how they apply to business analysis?
Just do some reading, and like luckily with now the one good thing about AI, just go to ChatGPT and say, tell me about the top 30 data terms or whatever. Right? So you can do reading like that. Lots of great videos, and then start applying them, right? And it's like anything. How do you learn business terminology? Well, you work with the business people, and you ask them, what's good to read. on this subject. Point me to some of your own documentation, perhaps, so that way I can get up to speed on what your group does. Well, it's the same thing with data stuff, right? Now the problem is you'll be overwhelmed with there's so many data books out there and so many websites and so many videos that you'll get overwhelmed. But yeah, going to one of the LLMs and asking it for tell me the top 30 terms, you'll get a reasonable answer, right?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stephen, you can always say, act as a data analyst instructor and create a lesson plan for me and let it do it that way.
Yeah.
Bob Churchill, you've had a lot to say in the chat. Do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say this is the closest thing I've ever heard to the way I think about stuff. So I'm very positively predisposed to everything you're saying. And a lot of the on the ground details of
Thank you.
actually having done it for a long time. I will be going back to review all this and add a few things to my own understanding and writing and so on. Just
Yeah.
a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I just saw your latest comment flash by, and the thing I want to add to that is that, and I didn't really talk about that at all in this talk, but in the book, one of the decisions they make early on is to follow a methodology and architecture strategy called Data Vault. And the good thing about that is that it has well-defined design patterns and architecture patterns. So that way you can automate a lot of the techie bithead stuff. So like that one diagram that was showing on the left a bunch of legacy data sources and it goes through the pipeline and it spews out to the humans. At all steps, there are well-defined patterns there. So, and there's tools that automate one or more of those steps almost fully. Now, you still need a human in the loop and you still need to make decisions. So you'd be absolutely foolish to let your tools generate that code and like blindly accept it. But if you're smart enough to, put the humans in the right spots in the loop, which is fairly straightforward and we talk about in the book, then you can really automate a lot of this work and get really high. Then what happens is it really gets down to the quality of your analysis, right? And you're always stuck on that, right? Like if you don't understand the problem, you don't understand what the needs are, it doesn't really matter what you build, right? So, and this is one of the worries that I have about the automated tools. Yeah, I can point these like the sales strategy is, oh yeah, just let us show you how we can point our magical tool at your data sources, and we'll spew out a data warehouse on that, and it'll take us 3 hours. Yeah, but is it the right thing? Oh well.
Very good.
Yeah. And so you've got to
Everybody
throw some
has
analysts at that problem. So anyways, yeah, but you're right. Like, you've got to get the analysis. Yeah, the analysis has got to be right, and then the technical stuff pretty much it's pretty straightforward after that. But you still need technical people, right? Like the problem with these tools is that yeah, it does the hard stuff, but you better have people that understand the hard stuff, because you'll have no. Okay, if you don't, then you'll have no idea what you're looking at, and you really won't. Like all this vibe coding stuff. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
What other questions do we have for Scott? Or comments?
Everyone comes from a different place with different experience and different ways of visualizing things. And I come from a particular background that causes me to start with a process map for everything. But that's just my way. But if you draw that of the abstract stuff and work out from there, you end up doing everything Scott is talking about and integrating all the correct specialists and so on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I also did mention this. I assumed away several key artifacts like business process models and the capability map and a few other things because I assume like they're pretty straightforward from a business analysis point of view. We cover them in the book. I didn't cover them here for, lack of time, which I obviously ran out of. But yeah. Yeah,
Scott,
your business analysis skills are still critical, and skills and knowledge.
Scott, would you mind sharing this with me and I'll share a link to it whenever I send out the email tomorrow morning?
Yeah, I can put this on SlideShare, and
Okay,
then send you the link.
perfect.
Yeah, and that way it's public for the world.
Okay.
Yeah,
The email
whatever
that
that's
goes
worth.
out tomorrow to all of you who attended will also have a link to the recording, so you can go back and hear what Scott's talking about as you go through each one. I noticed that Diane Wilson put a link in the chat for the glossary, and what it does is it takes you to the IIBA website.
Hmm.
If you're a member, you have access to everything. If you're not a member, you just need to sign in and you get 7 days of access. So it's available to you regardless if you've paid the membership fee or not. But what she's highlighting is the global standard for business analysis that's in there that would give you some of those definitions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating, Scott. My sincere thanks.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And I look forward to getting to work with each of you in the future. If you have interest in the CBAP study group that is going to fill up this week, I have no doubt, and we're going to be starting it next week. So I'm looking forward to seeing who it is that's going to be sitting for their tests in October. If I can answer any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you need any information, I'm happy to help. See you next week here, guys. Same time, same place. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.